Eric McLean, how you doing today, sir? Thank you for joining us.
I am living the dream. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. And today we're going to be breaking down the ACC with my co-host, Rowdy. Rowdy, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. As always, how are you?
Wonderful, man. Closing down the college football season. Glad to be doing this, jumping right into the ACC. And then, hopefully we can knock out the rest of the conferences as the offseason winds down.
Oh, yeah.
So basically, for the people watching, we're going to be breaking down division by division. We're going to be doing with the top three teams, focusing mainly on the top three teams based on our record projections. And then we'll throw a little bit of tidbits in there about the other teams. Kicking things off, Clemson, 12-0 is my projection for them, 8-0 in the conference. This team returns 92% of their production on defense. The unit kind of reminds me of the 2018 team. They went 15-0, had a handful of seniors buy in, come back to win a national championship, and they did that. Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant, Kendall Joseph, to name a few. Wilkins, I'm pretty sure he was going to go first round. He came back, and he was one of three defensive lines from first round in that team. They allowed 13 points per game. With how much talent is on this defense, also considering how fed up they are after allowing 600-plus yards in the Sugar Bowl, Eric, is this defense going to be the number one in the nation?
I think that's certainly a goal that they're going to have. And I think when you look at these guys, it's just young guys that are growing up quickly. I mean, you talk about the defensive line with Brian Brissy, Miles Murphy, two guys who were freshman All-American, who were All-ACC. Brian was the ACC Rookie of the Year defensively. They're special, and the defensive line really reminds me of more so the 17 team. I'm not going to get them straight to legendary, elite, one-of-a-kind status yet, but I certainly think there's a possibility. And as Tyler Davis, is he that in Wilkins piece that he decides next year to come back? And if that's the case, then I think there's no question that in 2022 this defensive line will rival that 2018 team. But I mean, it's skill everywhere you look. And of course, the fact that James Skalski is coming back, Balin Spector, kind of the Bash Bros there. This front seven, along with Trenton Simpson, are really going to be special. And I think that's their goal, is to be the number one defense in the country.
Yeah, for sure. 46 sacks a year ago that led FBS, and considering all the freshmen and sophomore, you also had KJ Henry, who you didn't mention, who had a big season as well. Mm-hmm. And Xavier Thomas is also back into the fold. This front seven is just dynamite. They didn't allow much back in 2018, and I can see the similar status happening this fall and with the entire front seven. The leader, Skalski, the QB of that defense, is also back, as you mentioned. Rowdy, what kind of stands out to you about this front seven?
Well, isn't there a fella, Justin Foster, I believe, that was out last season? Is that his name? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, and he's going to be a stud. Really, I mean, I could have sat here and listed the top three on the depth chart of every position. That's insane. How deep these guys are.
Yeah, I mean, I think this defense is going to be. I kind of agree. I think they can really get back to 2018 status. Obviously, they still need another year to see, but I'm really looking forward to this. And a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing is Andrew Booth. I love me some DBs in the ACC. I think the ACC, they put him out really well. And Andrew Booth is a guy that I really hope takes the next step in his development this season.
I don't think there's any question. I mean, a special player, a guy that is a ball hawk. He finds the football no matter where it is, whether it's doing a crazy, Odell Beckham one-handed snap, or just flying across the screen when Pittsburgh tried to do that little pass it back to the quarterback, then we're going to throw it again. So I think you're absolutely right. One guy that I'm really interested if there's a guy who is kind of just under the radar because of who he is. He's a true freshman, came in spring, really led the team as from the safety position, is Andrew Mukaba. And Mukaba, I think that he's going to be a guy that is absolute dynamite. Coach Sweeney talked about him so much when we did our spring game there with Clemson and just said, hey, this guy is going to be a dude. And I promise you he's going to play. He's going to play early. So we could see him. Clemson has had that kind of three safety look. Mm-hmm. Is he a guy that sneaks in there and gets some crazy playing time as a freshman?
Yeah, you throw in RJ Mickens right there, and it's their safety room. It's one of the deepest in the country.
Yeah, with the return of Nolan Turner, the lone veteran in the secondary, Mario Goodrich, another guy, former athlete coming out of college, they're obviously stacked in the secondary. I feel like, the back end's a little questionable. The communication really hurt them bad against Ohio State, which is shocking considering, the final game of the year were in January and they struggled that much. But for the entirety of the year, they were 16th in opponent completion rate at 55%, and Darian Kendrick is also gone. So are we worried about, any, big hiccups early in the season, especially with JT Daniels week one.
If his best two wide receivers weren't going to be, out for the season or out for quite a long time, I probably would say more of a concern. But if you look at that Ohio State game, guys, I am a former Clemson student athlete. I don't think that's a secret. A little bit of a Clemson fan. There were guys on that field that I did not know who they were. They were playing in the secondary. I'd never heard of these guys because they're so young, so inexperienced. And I think they got exposed a little bit, and not a little bit, a lot, to be quite frank. And, I heard that from Coach Sweeney. I heard that from Coach Venables saying, hey, look, they had to grow up very quickly. They weren't ready. And obviously, the scoreboard was what it was. The box score was what it was, and seeing the yardage. So I think those guys are going to grow up. I think the talent is just overwhelming, and the depth, as we were just talking about it's going to be there, and it's going to show up early and often.
Yeah, Clemson. Go ahead, Dalton.
Yeah, most definitely. They allowed 510 versus Notre Dame as well in the the first game they allowed 510 against Notre Dame. So they struggled against, bigger opponents, clearly. I think that's not something you're going to have to worry about this fall. I think Venables is going to have these guys right. They returned everybody pretty much. And again, like we've mentioned a couple times, they're going to be really, really upset. And they're ready to blast people in the mouth, I think. They still have a sour taste in their mouth. And with everything they have together, I think nobody wants to play this unit.
I think, again, when you talk about being able to move those guys last year, I mean, you had two starting freshmen and a starting sophomore. So physically, you talk about those teams that they were going against. You mentioned Notre Dame, who just had 4 offensive linemen drafted, and you mentioned Ohio State, who had just had a couple who are moving on to the next level. That will not be able to happen this year. But these guys are grown up. They're bigger. They're faster. They're stronger, understanding how to play. So I think, again, I know we touched on it from the jump in this show, but this defensive line is going to be the best in the country, and I think that will resonate through the entire defense.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't think there's much more to talk about on this defense, so we're going to flip to offense unless anybody has anything to add.
No, I think we can flip to offense. I'm quite looking forward to, offense. I'm really excited about this Clemson offense.
Yeah, the Clemson duo on offense, so Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne, they have a new home. They're in Jacksonville. As a Jaguar fan, I'm extremely happy to have those guys in town. But moving forward to this upcoming season, I'm not expecting a big fall off. DJ Ungole finished the year, throwing 78, 117 for 914 yards and 9 touchdowns. When they announced Trevor Lawrence was going to be out for 2 games due to COVID, I was like, I'm really not that worried. They're going to, Tony Ellis going to have a game plan for him.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to let him get in there and learn. And he, if anything, surprised me with how he performed in the 2 games, especially on the road in South Bend.
I don't think there's any question. I mean, he set the record all time as a freshman. I mean, how bizarre is that he was able to do that against a very good defense, against a team that is coached extremely well, and there was no drop-off. There was 0 drop-off when a generational talent, the first number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft, is out. And I think that number 1 goes to speak to, who DJ is as a person and how he prepares and is ready for, really any moment, but also what this Clemson team has been able to do. I mean, they are recruiting at an unprecedented measure. A couple of years ago, they just had their first ever number 1 overall class. Mind you, they've been to the playoffs 6 straight seasons. So what is that going to look like? You get a couple of number 1 classes. How much better can they really be? But it's impressive to see. And, DJ, we spoke again. I keep mentioning talking to all these coaches, but, it's just a great reference point. But Tony Elliott said, look, I've been with Taj Boyd. I've been with Deshaun Watson. I've been with Trevor Lawrence. DJ Uiagalelei has the best arm talent. And I was floored, guys, to be 100% honest. But he says he has all the abilities. He has the Patrick Mahomes no-look flair. He has the cannon of an arm. He has the touch on the soft passes thrown to running backs. And I think we saw clearly a very small sample size, but he made a lot of those type of throws. So I'm very excited to see his next step. And again, it's crazy if you're the rest of the college world, but you've seen generational talent, and now a third generational talent in DJ Uiagalelei lining up for quarterback for the Tigers.
Yeah, I was watching film, just a couple weeks ago on all the ACC quarterbacks due to an article I was putting together, and his film really stood out the most. The only problems the negatives only really took away with this, he just needs to learn to take some zip off his throws. You're young, he tends to be off target with some overthrows, but that was the only complaint I really had. The confidence he displayed was insane. 23-10 late in the second quarter against Notre Dame, and they let them back in South Bend. He did mainly because they only ran for what? I think it was 33 yards on 33 carries or something.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Oh, my bad. Go ahead. My bad.
Yeah, and he stayed composed. He led them back. A late drive in the fourth quarter took them the lead, and then a brilliant strike on the first play of overtime. It's just like, wow, this kid is spectacular, So, kind of speechless really when I was watching the film. The throws he was making downfield for being how young he was. It was really eye-boggling for sure.
With DJ, obviously you cannot understate the arm talent, but his rushing ability and his strength as a runner, I think that I would assume that Dabo kind of throws in a little bit more of a run game with the quarterback. He slowly did that with Trevor. Trevor got a little bit more confident as a runner, and I think that it just excelled. He excelled at that, and it upped his game. So we're going to see the same thing with DJ, but DJ is more of a stronger runner, and he embraces contact. He did that at St. John Bosco, and I am really looking forward to see how he is utilized with the running backs because ETN's gone. And the running back room it's pretty much, I believe, going to be led by Lynn J. Dixon. But the depth that they have with Darian Rencher and Will Shipley, it's going to build up to be a nice possible, RPO game could be implemented this season.
Yeah, and I think when you look at DJ, obviously when you talk about, the quarterbacks that I did and who is he most like when he's running, it's just like Taj Boyd. And so you're going to see that quarterback power. You're going to see that big game when you're running with your quarterback. But the thing to remember that's going to be very interesting is the depth of the quarterback position for Clemson is as thin as I have ever seen it. And I've been in some thin locker rooms where right now the backup is a former walk-on. And nothing against him. He came in against Georgia Tech, looked fantastic. But Georgia Tech isn't Notre Dame. Georgia Tech is not Ohio State at this given time. And so I just think that we might not see as much quarterback run as maybe you would want, as maybe you would hope. Because of that, you have to protect your quarterback.
Yeah, that just contradicts. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just one thing I like to add about DJ and the running ability, kind of Cardale Jones-esque. I think they're going to use him on fourth and shorts, keep him out of harm's way, sort of in that type of nature. Trevor wasn't always out of harm's way as a runner. Sometimes it kind of shocked me of how much, he was in the open field, but, he's a competitor, so he wants to make plays. But, like you said, the QB depth is not great. If he gets injured, I don't doubt the game plan they'll have in place, but still the talent drop off, it's going to be a big deal.
With Tyson going down, that really did throw a wrench in the Clemson depth room. And I see exactly now where you come from, Eric, about, the run game. I have that down in my notes that Tyson, went down with the Achilles, I believe it was, injury. And then, of course, I'm hoping or expecting, them to go run. But logically, obviously, you want to preserve your guys. So that's a perfect point to bring up right there.
Yeah, and another thing that'll be interesting is Clemson has a couple of really big running backs on the roster. Kobe Pace is a big, strong guy. Phil Maffa is massive. So, it'll be interesting to see, okay, those 4th and 1s, sure, you get an extra blocker, but would you rather just hand it to your big bulldozer of a running back and let him do his job? So I completely agree with you guys. I think it would be a very dangerous aspect of Clemson's potential game plan, but I just have to think that with the depth, with wanting to protect your guy, it's going to be something that's a little bit limited this year.
Yeah, alluding to the run game, I think it's going to be more of a committee approach this year for Clemson. Lynn J. Dixon, he's a speedster. Yeah, he's a pure blazer. He's not much, I don't know, bell cow, I guess you could say. And Travis Etienne's role is I would expect to kind of be filled by Will Shipley, the 5-star all-purpose back. I think that's what we can see in terms of the talent that DJ has around him. You get Justin Ross back at receiver. This is a receiving core that doesn't, at least in my eyes, doesn't have the most chemistry built. That's something they're certainly going to work on. But talent, no short of Joseph Nagata, E.J. Williams, Frank Ladson. You also get Galloway back at tight end.
Throw in Bo Collins as well.
Yep, Collins as well. The chemistry will need to be built, but the lack of talent, there is none in the receiving room.
No, there's no question with that. And I've actually been on a couple of radio shows, a couple of podcasts saying that, this could be the most talented wide receiver room we've ever seen. And that's bizarre to sit here and say that, because I played with Sammy Watkins, Nuke Hopkins, Adam Humphries, Teron Peak, Martavis Bryant, but these guys just have that look. They have that ability. And I think that there's no question that if Justin Ross is back to the dog that we saw in year 1 and year 2, that room could challenge those guys. I think even a guy like a Joe who doesn't even know how to play football, he's figuring it out as he goes along. could end up being a first-round draft pick. I mean, those guys are that good. It's going to be an injury thing. It's going to be, can we stay healthy? Can we stay on the field approach for Clemson? But, I mean, you're talking about 6, 7, 8 guys that can just roll and just go in and play right away. Oh, by the way, don't forget about Dakari Collins, Bo Collins, and Troy Stellato. Excuse me, that was bad. Troy Stellato there, 3 freshmen that they're coming to play. They're not coming to sit, and they're going to challenge guys in front of them, challenge, these coaches to get them in there. And it's going to be really fun to watch this wide receiver room. I agree they're unproven, but I think the potential is unbelievable.
Rowdy, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I really like Troy Stellato out of high school. I think he went to Cardinal Gibbons, I believe. Yep. And, he's because, I cover South Florida. Well, I don't cover it, but I follow South Florida recruiting a lot. And Troy was a great guy that I thought that was going to be another great pickup for Clemson. And I don't know, I would imagine they use him kind of in the slot. But, I mean, like you said, he's a guy that's going to challenge, any guy that's going to start for Clemson immediately. And that's what this team excels at. It's the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Ohio States. They just stack on talent, and that's exactly what Clemson has done in the wideout.
Yeah, he's going to be a little bit different in the slot too. You think of recently, Clemson has had these shifty, maybe not speedster type guys in the slot. Troy is a speedster. He's a guy that can take the top off. So it's going to be again another just dimension of that room that it's going to take it to another level. And again, I'm excited to see him. And then you had in the tight end group of Braden Galloway, Davis Allen, Jake Bringstool out of high school. It's going to be a lot of weapons. I think they're trying to find out a way, guys, to have multiple footballs on the field, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do it.
If the Brooklyn Nets can make it work with all those super.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Different salary cap, but very similar.
Yes. So for Clemson in September, they open with Georgia, and then later in the month, they play our next team on the list, NC State. They travel there. I have them going 9-3. Rowdy, I texted you a few weeks ago. This team altogether is going to be really good. 90% of the defense is back. They ranked middle of the pack last year. They didn't really struggle. They weren't really great at anything. But Tony Gibson in his second year, these guys are going to be much more physical. They only forced 9 turnovers in 13 a season ago. They need to get off the field more, and I think this is the year where they can really make some noise on defense.
I completely agree with you guys. I love NC State. I think they have the ability to really sneak up on some folks. I think they have the ability to throw a wrench in some people's plans, and it's led by that defense. I mean, I'm looking at their linebacking core with Drake Thomas, Isaiah Moore, and then one of the best linebackers I think in the country in Peyton Wilson. And, man, the sky's the limit. These guys could be so nasty on the defensive side of the ball. I think their defensive line is good enough. I think they're going to be stout and hold the point and really let these linebackers and DB swarm. I mean, we have seen NC State go to a 5 DB look a couple of – this is the year that it needs to be perfected. I mean, Tanner Ingle, Jakeem Harris, I mean, these guys have to take that next step of being dogs. And I think they have that ability. So really, really excited. NC State might be the second defense behind Clemson that – I'm most excited to see.
202 combined tackles, 22.5 tackles for loss for Moore and Peyton Wilson. Those guys really were just elite last year. They're going to lead the charge. Another guy I really think is going to stand out, Daniel Joseph. He went number 4 in the CFL draft. If you knew that was a thing or not, he's still going to play this. He's still going to play this fall. He comes over from Penn State, so he's a very highly talented guy. He's going to build off a great season last year. Like you said, that secondary, that's kind of where they're going to have to grow. Shaheen Battle, he made a lot of good plays during his freshman season. I think he's going to build off that, and they also have a few of those veterans in the back end. Rowdy, how do you feel about this defense? Because you were kind of iffy when I told you this was going to be a great team.
I think I'm not concerned about, the offense, but the defense, I think that, their front seven will be pretty good. But I'm concerned, I go back to last season, and they were just really inconsistent. And their defense, I felt like, costed them a lot of games because Bailey Hartman, I thought he did just enough in some games to win, but the defense just did not bail them out. So that's my biggest concern is, can the defense take the next step and actually, benefit the offense a little bit more and give them a little bit more assistance?
Yeah, and that was kind of the trend with NC State, is the fact that they were just so inconsistent. The entire team. I mean, they found ways to win, but guys, I promise if you turn on the tape and you watch all 8 wins from NC State a year ago, they all look different. They were very much different, where it's the run game one week, the passing game one week, the defense, finally picks up and wins us a game, special teams against Liberty. So it's a very interesting team that if they can pull it together and if they can get consistent and healthy, obviously, play from Devon Larry, I'm thinking, 8-9 wins is very attainable.
Yeah, I think they had a couple blocked field goals against Liberty, I believe.
To win the game. Yeah.
Yeah, very impressive performance. Only gave up, I think, 12 points to Malik Willis in their rushing attack. So they obviously, they can do well against, good explosive talent. Shifting the offense. So Devon Larry, like you said, it was unfortunate his season was ended to a broken leg, but he improved tremendously last year. He had 336 yards and 4 scores on a 63% completion rate against Pitt. That was really impressive. Those guys, I believe they were down in that game. They were just balling all over the place. How do we feel about Devon Murray? Because he had completed only 48% on 210 of his attempted throws as a freshman, which with that many attempted throws, that's a horrendous completion rate. He upped that up significantly. Before he was injured, his ability to make plays out of the pocket and push the ball downfield, it kind of surprised me. And I think with what they get back, this can be an offense that scores 30 to 35 a game.
Yeah, I think so. And you see how many people are returning. You see a core of wide receivers that are very impressive with Devin Carter, big, tall, strong body. Emeka Emezi, another guy who just has gotten better and better and better. Thayer Thomas, that is a fantastic wrinkle in the punt return games. Some funny plays here and there where he's able to do some trickeration. And then, of course, Devon Larry, if he's healthy and can throw it to him, I feel really good about them. I think they have 2 fantastic running backs, and Zonovan Knight and Ricky Persons Jr. So if they can pull this thing together, the offensive line more than serviceable. Big Icky at left tackle, I think one of the best tackles in the country. And then Grant Gibson, a guy who I'm starting to see him get a lot of love. The big center for NC State on some all ACC teams, some Remington recognition. So this team is going to be stout. It's going to be the consistency piece of, can we put it together each and every week and make things happen? That's what will determine, how many wins this team can get.
Yeah, add on the offensive line. They were a particularly young unit last year. So in college is next. Banking on experience really helps in getting better. So, of course, that's the biggest question mark with them. But, I was talking to Emeka Emezi earlier in the month, and he's also really excited to get Leary and all these guys back. He's really excited for the future, or at least for 2020, that is. Him and Thomas both had 40-plus catches a season ago. And that outstanding RB duo you mentioned with Person, a former 4-star recruit, and Knight. 118 yards per game, 14 touchdowns. Those are solid numbers for a duo. I think we're going to see that hopefully, creep up on 150 per game between the two. That would make me sort of feel more comfortable with the balance this unit can provide. But for the most part, I think all the pieces are in place for them to make some noise. Yep.
So who's up next, Dalton?
You can go ahead. Boston Colleges.
All right.
Eric, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I wasn't sure if anyone had anything. So, yeah. So Boston College is next. They were 6-5 a year ago. 8-4 is my projection for them. I don't know if that's a little too high, though. I really I was impressed with Jeff Hafley, a defensive coordinator, came to Ohio State, and it was the offense that really shined. Phil Jurkovich, 285 yards per game, made the throws downfield. They get Zay Flowers back, C.J. Lewis, and Jalen Gill, another guy who came over from Ohio State, along with Kobe White, who's going to be in the rotation. How are we feeling about this offense?
Man, guys, I am jacked up for Boston College. I think this team is going to be so much fun to watch. You just mentioned that fantastic wide receiver room. Now add Trey Berry, the transfer from Jacksonville State, big, massive tight end, 6'7", 245 pounds, a guy who is an absolute threat in any passing situation. I mean, he was Mr. Do-It-All for Jacksonville State, and just a guy who, again, can get great separation with linebackers, is way too big for defensive backs. And, I think Phil Jurkovich is going to fall in love with having this guy. Now, obviously, they just had a tremendous tight end get drafted in Hunter Long, but I think Trey is just a little bit different and a little more twitchy in that tight end room, that he can just really add some value, and I'm excited to see what he's able to do. The biggest thing for me with Boston College and how far I think that they can go is with the run game. I mean, they went from a team that is running almost every single play to now totally flipping with this new regime and really turned into a pro-style air raid, if you will, and throwing the ball. They move some pieces around in the offensive line, and I hope and pray that they move Zion Johnson back into guard, put him at left guard, put Big Ben back at right guard, put Ty back at left tackle, and just let it happen, because I think those guys are some of the best offensive linemen in the conference and really can go a long way. But it's all going to be centered around the run game.
Yeah, before you go ahead, Rowdy, one thing, I'm glad that you mentioned that, their offense completely it flipped scripts completely, but they were successful at it. It was kind of strange to see. They went from 250 yards per game on the ground to 101, and then their lead back, David Bailey, transferred to show you that they're completely focused on making this passing attack work. Djokovic, he's a tough dude, man. He's making throws downfield firmly in the pocket. He'd get blasted sometimes. He'd still make a great throw downfield. 17 touchdowns with 5 interceptions, for those wondering. It was really impressive what they did. I think they can be 4-0, heading into Clemson. They get Cole, Temple, Missouri. So, this team has a handful of few games that they can use to, build on offense, but also defense. I think this defense, they improved a good bit last year, but it's certainly going to be the focal point. They allowed 495 plus yards in 3 games. So the slight improvements they did, it didn't really lead to stability. They get 66% of the unit back, so a good amount to work with. What I'm really eyeing on this unit is the secondary.
I agree with you, and I think that's the obvious key. With a new coach coming in, defensive minded, a guy who is going to get this team right, and Jeff Hafley, I think that you're going to start seeing that swag turn up a little bit. You're going to start seeing these guys really play well, and I think the most impactful transfer maybe in the ACC, or one of, is Jaden Lars-Woodby from Florida State transferring to Boston College, a guy who was a very highly talented recruit, a guy who I think Ohio State was severely in the mix, probably because of Hafley. And now, they get a chance to coach him up. So I'm excited about that group. I think they're going to make some big-time strides, very noticeable strides on the defense and in the secondary.
Roddy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with Eric. I really liked, I saw Jaden Lars-Woodby a lot, seeing him play at Florida State, and I think he was one of the more versatile guys, and the key leader in their defense. A team that really struggled at both facets of the game, but he's going now Boston College. He's going to provide some stability to linebacker, secondary room, because he's that versatile. Play him anywhere. I'm a little excited. My question mark is still there for the secondary, but I'm also excited about Boston College and their offensive potential. I think it's same thing with what you said, Dalton, the fact that they completely flipped scripts from going a rushing team first to now what Eric said, pro style air raid. I'm really excited to see how Boston College takes off this year, with Phil Yurkovich.
And something I forgot to mention that Eric kind of alluded to, this offensive line is probably the best in the country. It's impressive, all the stuff they get back. But back to the secondary, Hafley was a secondary coach. He's been a secondary coach his entire career, really. And they improved tremendously last year. And they get a lot back. With Woodby, they get Josh DeBerry, Brandon Sebastian, Jamin Muse as well. Plenty of experience. Playmakers, too. I think these guys can probably, jump to the top 20, 25 passing defense instantly this season. But the biggest problem, both their starting linebackers, Max Richardson, Isaiah McDuffie, are gone. That's a big bulk of the production right there. 206 tackles between the two. The front seven has some question marks, but I'm sure, secondary can really control a lot for your defense. If they can hold things down to the back, it'll allow this pass rush to evolve. I think that's kind of what I'm going to bank on, at least for Boston College early in the season. Is there anything else on this defense that really worries you, Eric?
Yeah, I think linebacker is the biggest question mark for this team. Obviously when you lose that much leadership, that much production, guys have to step in and guys have to figure out, okay, now it's my time. It's my time to be successful and learn. It looks like they have a core of guys who have been there and have been in this program and then are getting, a transfer in Isaiah Graham Mobley. So I think that they're going to have, at least players who can, take up space and take up bodies. Like you said, I think that a defensive backfield can really make or break your defense. And, with Coach Hafley, that being his bread and butter, I think we're going to see a big-time increase in that position unit and just that group.
Yeah, most definitely agree. Next, we'll go ahead and move to Florida State. We're just going to touch on these teams slightly. Mike Norvell's an offensive guru, and I think they get a lot back. 84% on offense, but the talent as well. Ontario Wilson, Jashawn Corbin, Keyshawn Helton. I think these guys can jump to 30 to 32 points per game this year, especially with Mackenzie Milton in store for, coming over from UCF after recovering from that knee injury. I did not catch the spring game, so I'm not sure even if it would be relevant even if I did. But my biggest question mark, Milton, is will his mobility, be completely wiped out, or can he be the same as he was when he was in Orlando?
I think the key to Florida State's season is going to be Mackenzie Milton. I think that it's fun and it's cool to have Jordan Travis running around, and he's very tough to bring down, obviously, and had very good success, running at the quarterback position. But is it sustainable? Is it when, okay, I've got the game plan, I'm just going to take away that run? What else is there? And what else can you do? So if Mackenzie Milton can step in and be a guy and really even a shade of what he was at UCF, I think that there's some real, potential for this Florida State team, or at least somebody who can make some go even better. But if it's just Jordan Travis and he's scrambling for his life every other play, it's going to be a concern of mine. And I think it's something to really pay attention to.
Roddy, go ahead.
Yeah, the main thing with Florida State, and it's been a common trend for the past few years, is a horrendous offensive line. And they've also had some great running backs that made the offensive line look a lot better than what they really were. They had Cam Akers, and Eric, I know you're an O-line guy, but you see it. Florida State, they've had that O-line that's been shaken up, and those running backs have definitely helped. I think with the running back room they have now, with the addition of DJ Williams, Lawrence Toafili, and then you said Jashawn Corbin, this team, the O-line really needs to step up, obviously for Mackenzie Milton's sake, but the running backs, I think they could really bail out the O-line in some pretty tough situations this year. I really liked DJ coming out of high school, and to see him in this FSU offense, I think if FSU doesn't succeed on offense this year, Norvell's instantly on the hot seat.
Yeah, I think what you said about the fact that you can have great running backs and make you think that your offensive line is doing better. I thought it was almost, comical 2 years ago with Cam Akers, and I'm hearing, some guys saying, "Oh no, this offensive line's better. They're getting better. They're figuring it out." I'm like, y'all are blind. This man is just that good. He's making guys miss as soon as he touches the ball. It's a thing that has been a real concern. It's the piece is the lines of scrimmage for Florida State. If you can figure it out up front on the offense and defensive lines, that's how you get back to being a successful program. So until we see drastic improvement there, I think it's going to be more of the same for Florida State.
Absolutely.
And that was never really Norvell's specialty, was dominating the trenches. They had a very explosive offense at Memphis. Defense was never that good, but no one ever really noticed it because of how good their offense was.
Yep.
So it'll be questionable to see if they can get there. I have them at 7-5, 5-3 in the conference. Are we on par with that? Too much, too less?
I would say that's fair. If they don't get 7, that's what I'm saying. If they get 500, there's question marks for this team that need to be. There's already question marks that need to be addressed, but there's time for concern because there's too much talent on this offense for them to at least not kind of carry the defense.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting to see, does this team get back to the postseason? Do they miss a bowl game for the first time, since Bowden was hired? He was the second of consecutive years the last time it happened. And of course, that was his first team. And then they go on to be one of the greatest dynasties ever. So do we see that for the first time since, I believe, the 70s? You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. And I think it's a real possibility. 7 wins might be too many. You can still go to the postseason with 6, but I think this team's going to be closer to 5 or 6 wins.
Yeah, and I totally don't agree with it whatsoever. That's just how I saw it looking first glance at their schedule. But in between 5 to 7 wins, that seems to be the ballpark. That's going to be the expectation, at least from our end. Moving on to Louisville, I also have them at 7-5 and 5-3. Malik Cunningham coming back. I really like Scott Satterfield and what this offense does. Cunningham progressed a lot last year, did he not?
Yeah, no question. I think that he's a guy that is super effective with the ball. He obviously got more reps, more opportunity a year ago. The turnovers were up a little bit, but obviously that comes with throwing the ball more. But he's special, man. He has the ability to really hurt teams with his feet. But again, he's not just running to run, or he's not just scrambling to look to run with his legs. He's scrambling to get away from guys, keeping his eyes downfield to really find the big play. The question mark is just going to be, who is that big play going to? They lost so much production with a two-headed monster at wide receiver. Then, of course, running back as well with Hawkins. So, with no Tutu, with no Fitzpatrick, who's going to be the guy? Who's going to step up? I mean, we've seen speed from Justin Marshall. We've seen good speed from Jordan Watkins. Are they it? Are they the guys that step up? Obviously, Marshawn Ford is one of the best at scoring touchdowns at the tight end position, but that's really been in the red zone goal line area, which, again, scoring points, it matters, but in the open field, who's going to step up to be the guy? It's going to be fun to see. I think Jalen Mitchell is a load at running back. Hassan Hall has proven that he's more than capable of being a great running back as well. So it's going to be interesting. Can we get Louisville back to the version 2 years ago where they're running that stretch zone and everything is built upon it? That's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, they ran for 200 yards a game last year. Jalen Mitchell, Hassan Hall, like you said, their running game's not really going to be that big of a concern for me. But like you said, pass catcher, Braden Smith and Marshawn Ford, who I'm a big fan of, those are the only really proven guys out wide for Cunningham. Well, like you said, the talent of Cunningham, it's there. He's elite. He's an elusive runner. His dual threat talent, his effectiveness overall. It's really kind of reminds me of Zach Thomas at Appalachian State. Of course, that too was in Satterfield's system. When I was watching film on Cunningham, they played Pittsburgh last year. He struggled immensely. 9 for 21, 107 yards, 3 picks. His lone touchdown just came off a nice read on a corner route, and he only ran for 3 yards. So, of course, his supporting cast wasn't much help, but he wasn't great against a tough defense. That's a bit of a concern for me. I want to see the downfield accuracy improve, the overall, ball being pushed downfield. That's a whole offensive thing. So a little bit of concerns, but obviously the talent is there.
I completely agree. And again, when you look at the team that you brought up, Pittsburgh, and what they do, they try to confuse you. They try to get in your head. They're going to show you one thing on the left. They're bringing it from the right. And that day, it just worked very well. And Malik, was not able to move the ball effectively at all. And you saw the confusion with the picks, defense making great plays. So that's his next step is again, just understanding defenses so that he can better attack and really become that complete quarterback, which he is more than capable. He has all the tools at his disposal.
Roddy, would you like to add on to that?
Oh, no, I'll pretty much just agree with what you guys said.
Sounds good. Moving forward, Wake Forest. I don't really have much on this team. I've been going 5-7, 3-5 in the conference. I think their offense is going to be great. Sam Hartman, Jaquir Robertson, Christian Beal-Smith. But they're going to have to outscore people. I don't really have much faith in this defense after what I saw last year.
Yeah, and they lost a lot and have a big-time hole at safety. Outside of Nick Anderson, who, again, a walk-on last year, who just exploded onto the team. And really was a great story, but also a tremendous player. Just had a knack for finding himself around the ball. I think Jasir Taylor is a guy who is going to have to step up and really be just that lockdown corner, which he has shown that time and time again. But, the defense losing Boogie Basham is tough. I think guys like Ja'Cory Johns is going to have to step up big. Miles Fox, a couple of those guys who we've seen flashes are now going to have to do it on a very consistent basis. So it's concerning defense, especially in the secondary. But like you said, this offense, just score. Just go out and score 50-plus a game, 45 a game, and you'll be able to hang with nearly anybody. But this wide receiver room, we all thought was going to take a massive step back when Sage Surratt opted out. But A.T. Perry, Donovan Green, Jaquir Robinson, Taylor Moran, these guys are fantastic and really put on a show a year ago. I think Jaquari Robeson has the potential to be one of the best wide receivers in the conference. I think he is that special of a guy and, really has the complete route tree.
Yeah, most definitely this offense, like we've all agreed on, they're going to do some work. They get all those veterans back in the receiving core. After Sage Surratt disappeared, they had plenty of guys step up, which was, just awesome to witness because it was unfortunate to not be able to watch Sage last year. So it was nice to see some guys fill in and make plays for him. Roddy, do you have anything you'd like to add about the Demon Deacons?
I'd really like to see Sam Hartman take the next step in his development and be more consistent. He needs to improve his completion percentage drastically. I watched him in QB1 when he was in high school. I think the kid plays with some swag, and I really like that about him. But I think he just really needs to get more consistent because I think a lot of the woes on offense have just been inconsistencies on his part. And I think he can really improve those this year because the receiving core is great. He's got the weapons. It's just a matter of can he improve in one of his if maybe his final year in college.
Yeah, something I found eye-shattering. You guys probably think it's strange too. Sam Hartman, his best career game last year, 439 yards, 5 touchdowns versus UNC. The next 2 games, he completed 41% and 54% of his balls. He also had 5 interceptions. All 5 of his INTs on the year came in both of those games. So the consistency is a major issue. But I really enjoyed watching him play over the last couple of years. The guy really is a gamer.
He really is.
Moving to the next team, it's Syracuse at 3-9. They're 1-7. Jacobian Morgan, I'm really excited to see him, and I also think Taj Harris is a heck of a playmaker at receiver. But Syracuse, Dino Babers, he's really got a lot in store. Nothing but freshmen in the secondary. He loses some play. I mean, it was really a young defense altogether, but there was some big players at secondary as well. I don't really see this team making much noise. Does anyone else disagree?
No, I think it's going to be another year of struggle. Maybe they figure it out. I mean, Mikel Jones is a fun player to watch. Garrett Williams can put himself in the position to be one of the best, cornerbacks in the country. He's a guy that, again, just found his way around the ball and was able to create turnovers. Really, both those guys, Jones and Williams, I think can keep Syracuse in games with how they create turnovers and just find themselves around the ball.
I mean, Michael Jones, like you said, a linebacker. He led the team last year with 4 of them. But there's a lot of young talent on this defense for Babers to work with. Even if they go 3-9 or worse, I hope that Babers does not get fired because I'm kind of excited to see what this team can do. It's particularly young in all facets, in 2022.
I'm looking forward to the quarterback competition for Syracuse. There's not really much to talk about. I think, it's going to be another struggle year, but Tommy DeVito, he kind of showed a little bit that he could be a solid quarterback, but they're getting Mississippi State transfer Garrett Schrader, and I think he'll kind of throw some spice into the quarterback room and challenge DeVito. So I don't exactly know who the starter is going to be. DeVito's the veteran. He's been there. Can Schrader take the spot? It's kind of interesting to see the quarterback battle for Cuse.
I believe DeVito has departed, actually. I don't think he opted.
Is he really?
Yeah, I don't think he opted back for his senior year, but
Jacobian
Morgan, there was some small film on Morgan. He made some good plays, very, very young. He was pressing the action late in the year, but him and Schrader, they'll battle. It's kind of similar skill sets, I guess you could say. Moving forward, Rowdy, UNC, you have them at 11-1. Now, this is, an interesting thing because Sam Howell in his first 2 years is many elite, 3,500 plus yards, 30 plus touchdowns in each of his first 2 years. But for the first time in his career, he's going to be without that, quadrifecta of weapons: Carter, Williams, Brown, and Newsome. Is that reason to concern for Howells, or is he the type of player who's just going to uplift the offense no matter who's there?
I think they're going to.
Yeah, go ahead. I think they're that good of a player where, I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, maybe the best quarterback in the country. And of course, with that title, with that expectation, comes elevating everyone else. I think Coffrey Brown is going to be eventually, as faster than his brother. I think that he's going to be able to really stretch and put some stress on defenses. I think Emory Simmons is going to get back and step up and really fulfill that junior role that he's going to be in. Bo Corrales is back, a big time wide receiver, and then Josh Downs. I mean, UNC fans are so excited about Josh Downs. They think he's a guy that can lead the conference in receiving, and obviously the things that we've seen him already in his young career do. I think there's nothing but excitement about this new wave, of wide receivers that are going to be taken over.
Ready, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to their offense. I think it's just going to explode. They're young at receiver, but Sam is, one of those guys that, like Eric said, he's debatably the best quarterback in college football. And when you have that quarterback, you're going to win. There's a reason he's the best quarterback. And I think that UNC, they're going to go 11-1. I'd see Sam Howell excelling. I think the addition of Ty Chandler kind of helps the running back room a little bit, with the loss of Carter and Williams. So I wouldn't be too concerned about the offense.
Yeah, do you guys know who the top 2 recruits in Mac's first class in 2019 were?
I do not.
It was Sam Howell and Coffrey Brown. I think that's important.
There you go. Time to shine.
Yeah, these guys, I think they're going to combine for, 1,000 yards together next year. 22 yards per catch for Brown. He's going to slide to a number 1. So, and like you said, Josh Downs, he's a top 100 recruit. He's a smaller guy at 5'10", 175, but he's a playmaker. I really like this kid, along with Gavin Blackwell. It's not I wouldn't say this is a greatly talented receiving core, but they have guys who can make plays. The depth isn't exactly there, but make plays. Bo Corrales, 80 receptions in his career. He's a reliable pass catcher. His veteran presence. I think he's going to make some noise this year.
And I think, again, when you look at this offensive line, veteran-led, everybody back, really just a core group that, can come together and do something special. I think one guy that I'm really paying attention to see, okay, can he take the next step, is going to be Jordan Tucker. I mean, a massive guy that, showed promise as a true freshman and has gotten marginally better as the season goes on or as his career has gone on. I think we need to see him take a pretty significant step to really just be a lockdown guy that, they can rely upon and that he can be singled up each and every play. He doesn't need help. And that, in fact, will help.
Yeah, the offensive line getting the experience back. Like Rowdy said, Ty Chandler. I think that's the biggest offseason addition of, the 2020 offseason because they lost both their running backs. He's going to play a big role. They're going to lean on him a lot. The RPO game, it's really what gets this offense. It's kind of the fuel of the fire for this offense. The strong run game leads to a strong passing attack. So offensive-wise, I don't see an issue. I think they're going to repeat the numbers they had last year, top 5 across the board. But for this team to go 11-1 and potentially be a playoff team, Rowdy, like you're suggesting, the defense is going to have to improve. Chaz Surratt and a handful of role players depart. They gave up 400-plus yards in 7 of 10 games. One was a 392er against NC State, and another was versus an FCS opponent, the only ones they didn't allow 400 in. So the defense, they got grinded down on at times, but they get a lot back. Jeremiah Gimmel, Tamon, and Tamari Fox off the edge. I think these guys are going to, kind of like Boston College, they're going to explode tremendously on defense this year.
I agree with you. Go ahead, buddy.
I think, their secondary is a really good area that I'm looking forward to. I think Cam Kelly, Tony Grimes, Kyler McMichael, I think they round out a pretty solid secondary that are going to take a good step in their development this year. They cannot give up 29 points a game. They simply can't. They went up against Texas A&M last year and they struggled. They lost and they didn't look good defensively. Their offense is what's carrying them. I think their defense really does need to step up, though, because with the lack of talent on the offense, everyone going to the draft, their defense is going to have to step up because I think the offense will struggle a little bit early on. But outside of their offense, their defense just really needs to step up.
And I think they will. We're going to see these guys grow up. Again, we mentioned only one starter, not back with this team. And I think the guy replacing him, Eugene Asante, big number 7, is a special dude. I think he has better instinct. Chaz might not be as good of an athlete, but a pure line. I think it's going to be a big-time step in a good direction. And he's a guy against Texas A&M that just was all over the field. Every time I looked up, he was making a play. And so I think he's ready and excited for this opportunity. And another guy that I expect massive improvement from is Tony Grimes. I mean, I think he's going to be a guy that, he's going to be on wide receiver 1 each and every game and say, hey, you versus me all day long. And if he can isolate a guy like that, if he can shut down a part of the field, you've got to feel good about your defense.
Yeah, Tony Grimes, he only allowed on 23 targets, 8 completions last year. Well, he's supposed to still be doing, high school stuff on Saturdays. So, that's pretty impressive, I'd say. With Storm Duck, another player who's going to break out in the secondary, in my estimation. And then Trey Morrison, he's the lone senior. I like when these guys get all together. Of course, Jay Bateman, he has a lot to work with. And like you said, Eugene Asante, 10 tackles against Texas A&M. So these guys, I'm really excited. Last year they were getting so much back. I was ready to jump the gun and put them in the playoffs. This could be the year, though. This team might be a little bit better, at least on the defensive side. And, of course, the offensive potential, it's certainly there.
Yeah, I have them making, the ACC championship and obviously going against Clemson. So I think if, 11-1, they're definitely going to have a chance, again, to make the playoff, if they can possibly knock off Clemson, if we're expecting, UNC to get there. Obviously, I believe Miami will challenge them, but I truly think UNC will get there. But they have a chance at the playoff this year, I believe.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, do 2 ACC teams, are they fighting again? If you look at a North Carolina team, if they're undefeated going into the ACC, what does that look like? What does that set up? How does it stack against everybody else? Do I think that they can do the way that they were able to with Notre Dame and Clemson this year? Probably not, but I don't think there's any question the winner of the ACC is going to be in the playoff.
Yeah, just the one thing it really disappointed me last year by UNC was how they played against Notre Dame. I believe they were at home for that game, and they just got stonewalled. Hopefully that if they get a matchup against a team like Clemson in the title game, they don't look like that. I wish this team success. I hope they can perform well. I also hope for a good game as well. So, Moving to that team that will compete with UNC, Miami, the Hurricanes. Rowdy, you have them at 10-2, 7-1 in the conference. They can beat anybody with De'Aaron King under center. They get back the most returning production in offense in FBS, and that doesn't even include tackle Zion Johnson, who's arguably the best in the nation. What is holding Miami back, though, from making a potential playoff run in 2021?
I think it's a number of things. I think this year it could truly be a little bit of front seven issues. Last year, linebacker was an issue. Secondary was a very big issue, as we saw. UNC, I think you can't talk Miami defense without having to look at the UNC game last year. It was truly.
I feel like they gave up, really.
It really did. You allowed over 300 yards on the ground, and Sam Howell obviously had a field day. They just simply showed that Miami had to shore up everything on defense. And I think if that is what's holding them back, and that's actually why I have UNC, giving them their lone ACC loss this year, is because of I just don't think the offense, no real question. I think if De'Aaron King can come back healthy, they'll be fine. But the defense and UNC, their offense, I just don't think they'll be enough to stop the UNC offense.
And you look at this offense, I mean, these guys are so stacked at the wide receiver position, the running back position, and finally the offensive line is probably comparable with the rest of the team. I think that's what really was holding Miami back in these past 2 years. But now Zion Nelson is looked at as a potential first-round draft pick at left tackle. I remember his first game, him going against Florida, not ready.
Don't remind me.
Pounds, giving up like 5 sacks, and it was miserable. But Corey Gaynor, a guy at center who's been an unbelievable leader. Big Donaldson is going to be back this year. DJ Stafey at right tackle. So I'm very excited for this offensive line. Think they're going to be able to, kind of hold their own and be a team that, finally we can lean on and say, okay, boys, we need to go get this yard. We're running it right behind you because we have a thoroughbred, locked out, just unbelievable running back room with Chaney, Harris, and Knighton that any three of those guys can really make it happen. I think the biggest thing, to look at it with Miami is just De'Aaron King. His health. Is he good? Is he ready to go week 1 against Alabama? Because you've got to be 100% because if not, you're going to get exposed very quickly. But another thing, I mentioned that offensive line, just the depth at the quarterback position, finally back to where the U was the U. And that's what we were used to seeing. Now, these guys, Van Dyke and Garcia, obviously a little unproven. Garcia for sure unproven. But they look the part. They look like the real deal. I know it's a spring game. I know it's a practice, but that is a big time.
They looked really good
from Miami.
It might sound like – go ahead, buddy.
I think one thing to touch on with the offensive line, and Eric, you can give me your touch on this because you may have actually played, not against them, but, they're in the conference. I think this offensive line might be the best it's been since, the guys, Casey McDermott, Brandon Linder, John Feliciano, back when Al Golden was the coach, I think back in like 2015, 14. I think this line, because that O-line was really solid back then, and, we had Duke Johnson. There was, a really good room of, running backs and O-line. And I think this O-line is the best it's been since then. I don't think it's quite on par with that O-line, but I think it's a really solid O-line, and it's going to give De'Aaron King, enough to work with.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question how excited Canes fans should be. And I'm glad you actually, Rowdy, you brought up that 2015 game. Do you remember the score of that game? That was my senior year.
Yeah, I actually don't remember. Don't remind me about that. Deshaun.
I just thought I'd bring it up.
Deshaun running down the field. Goodness gracious, man. You're gonna get there's a lot of things, that game and Dalvin Cook, I don't talk about in college. I just don't talk about.
It never happened. It
never nothing did. For those wondering.
Thank you, Dalton. Thank you very much.
Some things I'd like to add to touch on what you guys were saying. De'Aaron King, they can beat anybody with a QB like him, even Alabama, as far-fetched as that sounds. A quarterback like that, you can beat anybody in college football. Like Houston. This guy's an elite playmaker. He did solid work as a receiver. He had 20-plus receptions, converts the quarterback, and then he scores 50 touchdowns, 3,600 yards, no problem. He only had one game of over 400 all-purpose yards last year. Even though he carried the offense, that was kind of staggering. They only had that once. I'm expecting these offensive numbers in Kings to kind of skyrocket this year.
Absolutely. Year 2 under Lashley is going to take off. I truly believe.
Oh yeah,
the
me and
offense
Rowdy
in general, 100%.
Yeah, me and Rowdy talked when Lashley got. Like, this is probably because I made an article of the top 5 candidates for the job, and Lashley was on that list, and Rowdy was like, I would be totally happy with that. And they really need to do is they need to run the ball better. In 2019, they only eclipsed 200 yards twice last year, and in 2019 once, and that was versus an FCS team. So Cameron Harris, he averaged 5.1s last year, scored 10 times. So the talent's there, but these guys really need to make that more of a focal point on the offense.
One thing that I know for sure that Miami is wanting to do, Rhett Lashley specifically, is he wants a bell cow. He wants his number one guy, and that's where I think it's going to come down to Don Chaney or Cam Harris. Jalen Knighton's a great athlete. He's more of an all-purpose back, I believe, get him in open space. But I think Don Chaney or Cam Harris are going to be the guys that Miami leans on because Rhett Lashley wants that number one guy. Completely. And I think those are the best options.
No question.
One thing I don't want to miss out on is, the receiving core last year had its hiccups, but the production and the experience that come back along with Charleston and Rambo being added to the fold, I'm really excited for this passing attack. And just to touch on the defense, Blake Rowdy, I've seen you posting every week, fire Blake Barker.
I'm not after UNC, it, kind of became a movement. I was truly not happy with, Blake Baker. And I think with him being gone, I think Manny Diaz taking back over the defense, it's going to excel. I think it will get a lot better.
Yeah, and I never understood why Diaz ever gave up the DC role. I've been saying, since the early part of last year, why is he not calling the plays? 778 yards versus UNC. They couldn't tackle. They couldn't be in possession. It was extremely bad. But they get back a lot of production. They lose their dominant edge presence in Phillips and Roche. 86% of its unit is back. That's kind of a fascinating number. But that edge rushing, it's going to have to be replaced. They get Zach McLeod back. DeAndre Johnson transfers over. Jafar Harvey as well. That's a guy who I think is going to have a big breakout season. Nesta Jade Silvery, top defensive tackle in the ACC. I think these guys can kind of cover up for the loss of Phillips and Roche. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And anytime, you're having to move, linebackers to defensive end, obviously it's a red flag. And then there's a question of depth and a question of who's going to be the guy. But, I think it's going to be serviceable enough. I think that, Bubba Bolden is going to be a fantastic player. I cannot wait to see his growth and development.
He's a tone setter in the defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thermostat. I mean, a guy that is bringing it each. And don't forget about old Ed Reed over there juicing those guys up. So I'm excited for this unit and, think that they can really get it back to, where they want to be.
Yeah, Booble Bolden, one of my favorite safeties, a physical imposer. He had 4 forced fumbles. He was also the leading tackler after coming over from USC last year. The secondary also acquired Tyreek Stevenson from UGA, and then Al Blades will also be back. Another guy I don't want to miss out on, Gilbert Frierson. I think he's going to be good. He's kind of a utility man. I think he's going to have a big season as well. A lot of high potential for this team, Rowdy. I told you a few weeks ago I was looking for a long shot to put some money on to win the title. I'd call me crazy, but I think this Miami team could potentially do it, with all they get back. But like you said, the depth on defense is a big concern.
Yeah, final note on Miami, I think their true freshman duo of Leonard Taylor and James Williams. James Williams, a freak of nature at 6'5", about 220, 230. Isaiah Simmons comparison, I'd say. He's going to be, a guy that they can roll down in the box. I don't know if he'll play a lot because of the depth that Miami has at safety. Leonard Taylor, I believe, is another guy. If depth really starts to become an issue, on the front seven, then I think Leonard Taylor will definitely get a presence and be able to make his name known early on.
Yeah, for sure. Moving ahead, you have 2 teams tied at 7 and 5, Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech. You have the Yellow Jackets with the higher ACC record, so we will start with them. Eric, you really found that kind of shocking that we had Georgia Tech at 7 and 5. Do you see any reason to support that, or are you kind of leaning towards another 3 and 7 type season?
So y'all think Georgia Tech is beating 7 teams on their schedule?
Well, Rowdy went ahead and gave them the 7.
I want to know which teams they are.
Let me pull it right up.
Early in the season, they have a very favorable schedule. Over the back end, they get Georgia, Notre Dame. They also have Clemson early in the year. I had them personally at 6 wins. Rowdy has 7. In college football, sometimes teams like to shock people. Georgia Tech, they have a complete schematic change on offense. So, of course, it's going to take you at least 3 to 4 years to get your guys in there. They averaged 100 more yards per game in 19, also 24 points per game compared to 17 and 19. with Jeff Sims, Jahmyr Gibbs. They took some massive steps. Also get Malachi Carter back. I'm thinking this offense can continue to progress very nicely.
Let me just tell you something. They play Clemson, North Carolina, and Pitt all in a row. It is going to be bad. It's going to be ugly. I think there's no question that Jeff Sims and Jahmyr Gibbs are special and very, very talented. I think electric players. It's going to be one of the more exciting backfields to watch in college football. But, guys, this schedule is not fun. I just mentioned those three games. And then Virginia Tech, Miami, Boston College, Notre Dame, Georgia. I mean, there is no shot that they win 7 games. I would bet my career, whatever you want to bet, that it's just too – they're not far enough along. And I think they can be. I think Coach Collins is a mastermind. I think that he is a great coach. I think he is one of the most brand-aware coaches I've ever seen. And it's working. It's getting the recruits and getting the attention. But at the end of the day, they're just not there yet. And, there's no shot. But hopefully in, 6 months, you and I and the three of us can get back on a podcast and y'all can tell me how crazy and dumb I am.
Well, let me add this. I think my biggest reason for having them at 7 wins is I think the offense, you say to yourself, Jeff Collins is a mastermind and he's a really good coach. I think the second year under Jeff Sims, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jordan Mason, Jamius Griffin, Dante Smith, their run game is going to excel. RPO options, Jeff Sims is a runner. Jahmyr Gibbs, you can get him out wide, utilize him. And then I think their defense, they're building pretty well through the transfer portal. They got Kevin Harris from Bama. They got Kenyatta Jackson, both Grayson, Georgia boys, and then a weak side defensive end and a strong side defensive end from off Old Dominion in South Carolina. So they're trying to build their defense. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why I have them at 7-5 is because I kind of feel like Jeff Collins is going to really – I feel like they're kind of my sleeper for, a surprising season in the ACC this year.
Yeah, the Yellow Jackets get back 80+% of production on both sides of the ball. Quez Jackson, Tariq Carpenter. Collins is an excellent defensive coach. He gets some of those guys. Jordan Dominic as well. I think he's going to be a standout player. Eric, we made sure to bring the evidence to try and back it, so we did something foolish by thinking to win 7 games.
That's right. Hey, all the evidence, all I do is lay out the schedule. That's it.
Yeah, when watching film on Sims, I really like him. I think, he was a high-ranked recruit. Sims and Gibbs were also the top 2 ranked recruits in Georgia Tech's recent recruiting class anyways. He only completed 55% of his balls, and even TD, the INT ratio, 13-13. And the kinks obviously still need to be worked out. Decision-makings throughout the season, it was a little inconsistent. Sims, he overthrew it. He blatantly forced it at times. It was ugly at times watching this film. But, he's kind of got his back against the wall, considering they're still undergoing a massive schematic change with Paul Johnson, who was there running the option for, I think, a decade.
Yeah, there's no question that the biggest thing for me in Georgia Tech is protecting the football, is not turning over the football. It seemed like every time I watched them, it was just a critical fumble, a critical interception, and that's the name of the game. And if you're going to want to shock people, if you're going to surprise people, you've got to protect the ball. You've got to create those turnovers for your own offense. And that, I think, along with offensive line development, are going to be the 2 biggest things for Georgia Tech to overcome.
Yeah, they gave it away 25 times last year. That's obviously they're going to have to cut that down for sure. Rowdy, is there anything else you'd like to add to support this erotic claim about Georgia Tech?
No, I think we both brought up, very valid points. The schedule is, pretty tough for Georgia Tech, a team that, Eric, you think that's, it's not quite there yet. What would you say for, 7-5 next year? Let's say next year for 7-5.
Well, who do they play next year? Is first.
Okay. I like it. I
Okay.
like where your head is. I think it will come together. I mean, you're talking about 2 superstars being, juniors or even, second-year sophomores, however you want to look at it with the rules that'll be in place. But again, the piece is going to be development on the lines of scrimmage, which you would think by year 3-4, that's where you would really start to see that come into light.
Mm-hmm.
Moving ahead, the next team that was at 7-5, I think this team can actually make some noise this year is Virginia Tech. I'd like to start with their defense. Last year, Bud Foster's first year, he was there since 1995 as the defensive coordinator. Justin Hamilton took over in that role, and they struggled. They have 32 points per game, 130 yards allowed. The D needs help, but they have the players in place. Shamari Connor, JUCO transfer Mari Barno. We had 16 tackles for loss last year, and Dax Holyfield's going to step in at linebacker. How do we see this Virginia Tech defense? Is it going to improve massively, or just going to be kind of stagnant like it was last year?
I don't think they have a choice but to go up. I mean, I think that there really is no further they can slide. Now, obviously, you could take that, to a literal sense and say, yeah, sure, this is what they could do. But I just don't think that we'll see that. I think, Barno at kind of edge, linebacker, defensive end is going to be a huge piece. I mean, that guy was unblockable at times. Transfer Jordan Williams from Clemson is a fantastic player that, I'm excited to see get another chance at a new place. You mentioned Dax. I think Jermaine Waller is going to really want to bounce back and say, hey, I'm cornerback one around this conference, and, really just be that guy, because, again, we've seen flashes of that. But, again, there's no question the defense is the name of the game. They have to step up. They have to do more for Virginia Tech to be successful and to ultimately get the wins that they want.
Rowdy, go ahead.
I think Raheem Blackshear is a guy that I'm really looking forward to see, with Khalil Herbert departed and Hendon Hooker gone. Braxton Burmeister, he's going to be, I would assume, number one quarterback and hopefully settle down.
Well, you never know, Virginia Tech.
Yeah. See, that's where I'm going.
The path is cleared, though. Hooker's gone. Patterson's gone. Who's going to North Dakota State. Great move by him.
You would think that.
Yeah,
you would. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying is I'm not sure if Burmeister is going, I hope he's kind of the number one. I would like to see Virginia Tech settle down with one quarterback. He looked okay at times. But you just said it yourself, you may think so because this team loves to, throw in so many different quarterbacks, but with the guys, listed that Dalton said gone, I think it kind of falls into place that Burmeister is the number one guy.
I do too. And then that was more of just, like a joke and the coaching staff there that, man, you think you got a starter and then they just throw somebody totally new in there. And I think when you look at this team's offense, obviously Trey Turner, special player that I'm really excited to see him kind of cap off and take another step forward. But this offensive line, guys, they are nasty and guys that love to run the ball, that want to be, kind of the put it on my back, let's go full speed. And I think, kind of led by Brock Hoffman up there, big center transfer from Coastal Carolina, showed that he was a dominant force last year. Think of him going into this season as, the number one center in the ACC.
Yeah, they made I'm pretty sure they made one or two offensive line additions in the transfer portal as well. Could be wrong. But yeah, the offensive line, it's a real strong point on offense. I really like the talent they have as well. Raheem Blackshear, Rutgers transfer last year, played a shadow to Khalil Herbert, but he can do it all. That's a name people are going to soon realize, or they're going to soon hear a lot this upcoming season. Travion Robinson, James Mitchell, other guys Burmeister can throw to. When you're touching on Burmeister, he's been very underproductive in his career. I believe he was a 4-star recruit, went to Oregon. Wasn't very good. He wasn't very good this far at Virginia Tech. But watching the film, I was more impressed. The stat sheet didn't tell the full story. He has a good arm. He's got the ability to make throws downfield. He provided small sparks for him whenever he was pressed in the action. He played the first 3 games of the season. Then he wouldn't see the field again until December. But I think, the path is cleared for him to start. I expect some exciting stuff from him, sort of being a veteran and all that's in place. We'll kind of see how that goes.
And another guy I think who is the best at their position in the ACC, James Mitchell. I mean, a guy at tight end who has been utilized in the run game, the pass game, and really just a Swiss Army knife for Virginia Tech. I think that he's an incredible player. Excited that he decided to come back at the tight end position, and then also Keshawn King. I mean, he was a guy as a true freshman a couple years ago, really bursted onto the scene. And even to the point where Pro Football Focus had him just like as the number one freshman in the country at one point. And then he, some injuries occurred. He kind of, fell obviously to Khalil Herbert, but expect him to get back and re-involved in this offense.
Yeah, most definitely. They went 5-6 last year. That was the first time, I think, since 93, they haven't made a bowl game. They lost 4 players to the draft. 2 of them went in the first round. So they replaced just a little bit of talent, very, very key pieces as well. I think we'll see them back in the postseason, almost certainly. Moving forward, Rowdy, you have Pittsburgh at 6-6, 2-6 in the conference. They had 6 players drafted, 5 of them on defense. They get back a couple of guys at linebacker and Cam Bright and Sir Vaca Dennis. He had 14.5 tackles for loss last year. Their defense is obviously going to be kind of grasping at straws, I feel like, early on of how much they lose all over the place, really. A lot of key, mainly in the secondary and on the defensive line. How are we seeing this defense taking a massive step back? Are they going to be kind of modest? Pat Narduzzi always says these units stout and ready, but what's kind of the census on this one?
Yeah, I think it's when you look at Pitt, it's just who they are. They just have guys waiting in the wing, ready to fly around, make big plays, and just schematically are very difficult to prepare for. I mean, Servassier Dennis is a fantastic player. Cam Bright was a great linebacker. Phil Campbell. So I think the strength is going to be more of that, middle level at the linebacker level. But Kalijah Cansey, Destin Alexandre, John Morgan, guys that, were waiting their turn, and now it's here. Now they can step into that role and really come out to play. Keyshawn Camp, another guy who when they slide him down to, the defensive end edge position is super effective. So I know they lost a ton. It's going to be a lot of new faces out there, but, I think the defense is really going to be just fine. And, guys are going to step up accordingly and, just be ready to play. That's just what Pitt does defensively.
Roddy, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, it's more or less their offense that I would be concerned about this year. They have Kenny Pickett coming back, and that's great for them. I think that their defense will be solid, but the offense, it's just kind of been, it seems like it's always been their kind of Achilles heel over the past few years, and they can always come out and upset somebody and, just shock everyone. But their offense has always kind of been an Achilles heel. Pickett hasn't always been the most consistent quarterback, but their defense it's going to always be stout, and I think that's going to be the same case for this year.
Yeah, and see, that's what's so interesting to me is I kind of have Pitt where you have Georgia Tech and maybe then some. I think Kenny has the tools to be really, really good. I think he has the arm talent. The biggest thing is just his health. With me, can he continue to be on the field? Because Pitt is a different team with him out there. I think the offensive line is good enough. I think this wide receiver core is actually really deep, led by freshman phenom from a year ago, Jordan Addison. They're special. And you add in Lucas Kroll at tight end. If he can stay healthy and be on the field, a guy that can really stretch it and put you in unique situations. The key for me with this Pittsburgh team is going to be the run game. Can they get anything going with Vincent Davis, Israel, the other Davis, AJ Davis? If they can figure that out there and not rely on, Kenny having to throw it 50 times a game, if they can find some kind of balance, I think this Pitt team could be a little special.
Yeah, they haven't scored over 30 points per game since 2016, and that included 2018. I believe they went to the title game that year. They had 2,000-yard rushers as well, and they still couldn't hit the mark. When I was watching film on Kenny Pickett, I was like, what? I think this guy's going to be really talked about next year when it comes to draft boards and whatnot. I really think he projects well at the next level. The competitive toughness really stands out about him. Like you mentioned, the arm talent. Very impressed by Pickett. Inconsistency at times kind of plagued them. But I think he can be the guy that carries this team to a lot of wins this season. And like you mentioned, Jordan Addison, I don't know how many times I've seen him make a big play.
Yeah. And Kenny has that sneaky athleticism too. I mean, he can run it if he has to. And again, a guy who, I'm excited for and think that coming back was a great idea and he's going to make a lot of money for himself.
I think he's going to be a higher draft pick than people think next year. That's for sure. So I'm sure you're going to see it a lot over the next 6 months. This season's going to be big for him. This is his 5th year.
Pickett has heart. Pickett, that's his biggest thing is the Pittsburgh, the team itself may not be a winning team, but Kenny Pickett's a winner. And, I'm not super sold on him, but you can't deny it. You watch the kid play, he's got ability. He's like sneaky athletic, like you said, and he's got heart. He wants to win, and he will do what it takes to win.
Yeah, in my article I made about the ACC quarterbacks, I put this offense should score around 35 points per game. That's kind of a stretch, I think, but looking back at it now, I think that's kind of a stretch. But certainly Pickett, competitive toughness, the guy, he's going to go out there and give it his all. So,
Dalton, since you just brought up that statement about the ACC, is there a conference that even sniffs the ACC quarterback situation?
Oh man, we're doing this. I was like, man, these guys are so good. I had Sam Hartman down at number 9. I was like, that's just crazy to have him there because he just made so many good plays. I really don't know if there is though, because I remember I watched film on all the guys. And I was like, man, I made a post on my Instagram page the next day. I was like, I'm really excited for this conference at quarterback, especially if our next team. You have Virginia at 4-6 Rowdy. All I'm going to say is Brendan Armstrong is going to be a superstar.
I agree with you. They are a different team with him on the field, and a guy that, his completion percentage wasn't great, but he's a baller. He makes things happen with his legs, with his arm. He gets out in traffic. I agree with you. I think Virginia is a completely different team with him on the field. I love what they do with Thompson, the fact that they put him at receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end, anywhere on the field just to get him touches and to get him the ball. I think that's really impressive. The key thing is going to be what they lost at receiver. The fact that Lavelle Davis is out for the season with an injury. I think some guys are going to have to step up, and depth is a real concern for me at that wide receiver position. But I'm pretty excited about Virginia too. It might only end up being 5-6 wins, but they're going to be a fun team to watch.
Yeah, Bronco Mendenhall, he really hasn't missed it at Virginia when it comes to quarterbacks. They had to replace Bryce Perkins, who had the most production, I think, of any quarterback in 2019 for a single team. He's gone. Armstrong comes in, and he just does the same with his arm, his legs. He held his own against Clemson, 359 yards. At times, they really couldn't stop him when he was running. I had a good time watching that. I had to watch it back again because I'm really impressed by him. People don't know him now, but they're going to know him by the end of the year. He's going to make a lot of plays to end up on SportsCenter, that's for sure. Rowdy, would you like to add anything about Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, I have them kind of low, but I can agree with Brendan Armstrong, and his talent. He's a really talented kid, and like you said, Bronco Mendenhall, he's typically done good with the quarterbacks at Virginia, and Brendan Armstrong just kind of is carrying the torch for that.
I'd also like to speak, Virginia, they've also, over the last couple of years, had some real good talent on defense. They haven't always been really able to put it together, but they've got ball players, Nick Jackson, Zane Zandelier, Charles Snowden. Last year, for example, those guys were really big playmakers. I'm not sure how much they're going to improve this year. It seemed to be an Achilles heel for this team, but when they get it going, they are tough to beat. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think Noah Taylor is going to be a guy this year that's kind of in that Charles Snowden role, a bigger defensive end edge player that, drops in coverage and makes plays. Nick Jackson, I think, is going to be one of the best linebackers in the ACC. And then Joey Blunt, I think he has done a tremendous job, had a great career, but overall, the secondary for Virginia has to improve. They gave up 1 billion yards, it seemed like, every game through the air. They led the ACC and, pass yards allowed. That has got to be a big thing that they step up and figure out and, ultimately improve at, or it's going to be more of the same.
Yeah, they gave up 520 to Boston College, but they held them to -7 rushing yards, so that's the important part there. But yeah. Moving to our final team, Rowdy, you have Duke at 3-9, and I wholeheartedly agree with this. David Cutcliffe has his hands full. This team, the quarterback situation last year, Chase Bryce didn't do much at all after transferring from Clemson. The QBs combined for 11 touchdowns and 19 picks. That right there is just not going to win you any football games.
Absolutely not.
And again, they've led the world, not just the ACC, not just Division I, the entire world in turnovers, guys. It was abysmal. It was the reason they lost all the games that they did. I understand the one team in the ACC that is not returning, any quarterback who had starting experience. I think the one thing that'll be interesting to see and talking with Coach is the fact that these guys that they have on the roster, Lucas Diamant, Holberg, they are very athletic. He said all of those guys are running, in the 4.5s or less. Could be a fun little bonus that we see from Duke with, the quarterback run. We saw them do some of that against Alabama a couple of years ago with a little bit of triple option that gave Alabama fits, to be honest. So do we see, of that where they have just quarterbacks running out in space? I think Mateo Durant is a special player, and now that he's going to get some bulk of the carries, excited to see that. But like you guys, I'm not expecting too much out of Duke next year.
But they do have the talent, like you said. Durant, Jalen Calhoun's there. Linebacker Shaka Howard, he's the leading tackler. He's back. Does anybody want to guess on what the turnover margin was last year for Duke?
I know they led the country. I know they didn't get a lot of them. So, man, I don't even know.
It was -19. They allowed.
There you
they
go.
gave up, 39 total giveaways. I just don't.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how you can possibly do that. -2 per game on the average there if you wanted to average that out. So I do think the D won't allow 38 points per game because the offense turning it over, that goes hand in hand in that. So I think that number will come down significantly this year if they can keep the ball out of the opposing defenders. But for the most part, Cutcliffe has his hands full.
Yeah, I mean, and they have to replace Chris Rumpf, and I don't know how to say his name, Vic
Dimu KG.
That's what I thought. Dimu KG. Yeah, they have to replace those guys who were really good, stud pass rushers. I've always liked Chris Rumpf, and they have to replace those guys, and I don't know who their quarterback's gonna be. I don't think anybody
Holmberg,
really
I believe,
does.
will be the starter. Yeah,
Holmberg will start out.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
who I projected at least.
Eric, do you think your joke earlier with Virginia Tech with their quarterbacks, do you think that actually could go into reality with Duke this season?
It might have to be honest. I think that there was a more stability or perceived stability at Virginia Tech. I mean, especially with Hendon Hooker. I mean, I don't know how you guys felt about him, but I thought he was an exceptional
I
talent.
did, yeah. I thought he was really talented.
Yeah, it's like every time he got in and got a rhythm, it was like, oh, nope, we're going to start somebody else. So I don't think it's similar situation that way, but it might have to be a revolving door in the fact that we're going to the hot hand, and whoever practiced the best is going to play, and whoever plays the best that game is going to play the next game. So I think that's what we certainly could see from Duke.
Yeah, Holmberg, he's been there since 2018, so he should have the upper hand. But if not, well, I don't know what to tell you, sir. So.
How long do y'all think Cutcliffe has at Duke? That just kind of lackluster seasons recently.
I think that he's a guy that has done so much for Duke. If anyone ever challenges, him as the guy, or if he's right for the job, I think they're delusional. I think that, again, with facilities, with football in general, with the importance of football, he has changed everything at Duke. So I think it's lifetime. Whenever he wants to be done, he'll be done. But, it might be, kind of like Coach Rick, where he says, I'm just not the right guy for the job anymore.
Yeah.
Kind of comparable to Pat Fitzgerald in a sense, not in the sense of winning, but what he's done for the program, I guess.
That's right.
Absolutely. And the cap off the show, that concludes our projected standings. To conclude the show, we're just going to, fire shot some awards. Offensive Player of the Year, I have DJ Ungolele. Eric and Rowdy, who do you guys have?
Okay, I like that. This is so hard for me because it's, when you're doing these, and especially in the preseason, you want to project, but you also want to, reward what guys have done and where they are. So if we're going full projections, then I agree. I think DJ is going to be the guy. I think he's going to step up, really take this conference by storm, and, Clemson's not going to miss a beat.
Ready, go ahead.
I got Sam Howell, and I think that kind of speaks for itself.
I do too. And again, if we're looking at strictly what people have done, I don't think there's a question. But with the fact that he's losing all of his guys, he's going to have to do it by himself.
Yeah, there's a real it's kind of open.
That's right. So I think that's where DJ can slide in. But I don't think there's any question Sam's one of the best, if not the best, quarterback.
Those guys are both 1 and 2 as the favorites for the Heisman, so I'd imagine one of these awards will go to one of them. Defensive Player of the Year, I have Peyton Wilson, NC State. Who do you guys have?
I'm right there with you. I think he's the best linebacker in this conference, one of the best in the country. He's going to have all the tackles. He's going to have all the stats. If he can continue to, just help his team out and get some wins there, I foresee that being a walk-away award. But if they struggle, I could easily see in a guy like Brian Bresee taking it home, which would be interesting to see a D lineman do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think Brian Bresee is definitely I would say he's my second choice for defensive player, but number one, I got Tony Grimes, UNC.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, kind of strange, a Miami fan giving UNC all the props on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm really sold on UNC.
Well, that's their daddy. That's his daddy right now. He's got
Hey. Okay, I see you with the insults now. But I truly, I'm really sold on the talent that UNC has. And, that's not the only the last UNC award I have. But, Tony Grimes, I think he's really going to take the next step in his development. An underage guy, Dalton, you said he should be doing high school homework. The guy, he should be a freshman right now. I think he's going to really excel because he got some college football under, this kid's going to really excel this year.
Yeah, and next award, newcomer of the year. This can be, a true freshman, a transfer, whoever. No, I'm expecting it to be a clean sweep of Mackenzie Milton. That's who I got. But I think there could be some guys competing for that award. Are we kind of keen on Milton, or are we seeing somebody else edging him out?
Yeah, I think it is so interesting because it's such an award that can be dominated by the quarterback position and really all awards, if eligible, they kind of get the unfair shake, if you will. I think a guy, I mentioned him earlier and really spoke highly about him. I think Trey Berry for tight end for Boston College can be that big of a difference maker where, he's mentioned in this award. I think he's going to have the stats. I think he's going to have the impact. So I'm going to go non-quarterback, and I'm going to go with Trey Berry.
Okay.
Rowdy, do you have Milton?
Yeah, I roll with Milton, and then I actually went ahead and did a freshman because, I felt, it'd be best to do a freshman, and I got Will Shipley for Clemson.
Yeah, I totally
That's a great
agree.
pick.
Yeah, I agree with Shipley as well. And final award, Coach of the Year, I have Dave Doran. I'm sold on NC State. So, not much to explain. We explained earlier. I think this team all around is going to be really good, and I think that he's going to be Coach of the Year in the conference.
There you go. I love it. I'm going with Mac Brown. I think he's going to have them in the championship game against Clemson, a top 10 team in the country, maybe even top 5. I think that's all going to speak for himself, and he's going to be rewarded for it.
Rowdy, go ahead.
Well, since apparently he's my daddy, I got to go Mac Daddy.
That's right.
I got to go Mac Daddy.
Before we wrap this up, a few things I'd like to add. What's better for NC State? I think it's September 25th. They play Clemson. Does NC State want to play a Clemson team that lost to Georgia, a team that beat Georgia?
Oh, man. I don't think you ever want to play a Clemson team that just lost. I would go with probably a convincing win where they're feeling really good about themselves against Georgia, and maybe, NC State could sneak up on them.
Rowdy, would you like to add to that?
I think that Clemson, they're just going to win. You don't want to beat them. You don't want to play them after a loss. And really, they lost, in the playoff. So they're going to come out against Georgia with the, chip on their shoulder. And I don't think that they'll lose either game.
So bad news bears for NC State regardless is what I'm hearing.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing I would like to ask you, Eric, Dabo Swinney, I've always loved him as a coach. I'm not really like a Clemson fan. I'm a college football fan. As a college football fan, I think if I could play for any coach, it'd be him. What is, a few words that sum him up as not just a coach, but as a man as well, being a former player?
Yeah, I think one thing that is just so apparent about him is how much and how important his faith is to him. And I do a ton of interviews about him and talk to people all the time that, it's not like he was up there, preaching from the Bible all the time, but it was so apparent with who he was, how he handled situations, how he treated people, no matter if you're a walk-on that can't help the team at all or the most important player. He just respects you and loves you and wants the best thing for you. So he's a player's coach that truly will do anything for his guys. And it was just so evident playing for him. So I'm very lucky to have done that. Still to this day, a big mentor of mine. And again, the success that he's had, there's no question as to why. And his dedication and love for his players is something that's really, really important to him.
Yeah, I remember Trevor Maddich said a thing where Dabo commented on one of his players, shaving his beard. And he's like, "Oh, did your girlfriend finally make you cut your beard?" And he was like, "Just for him to know that."
Right.
Shows you how much he cares about his players. And I was like, that just speaks volumes of Dabo. I think he's a phenomenal guy. Hopefully me and Rowdy one day get to meet him, potentially have him on the podcast.
Absolutely, man. Dabo, he seems like a great guy, obviously, on interviews. He just seems like an uplifting guy that loves the game and, loves his players. I'm with you. I'd love to meet Dabo Swinney one day.
And that's how he is. I mean, whether it's in the media, if it's just in private, he's the same guy all the time. And that's what's really so impressive about him.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up, guys. Eric, we really appreciate you having you on, giving us.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. This was so much fun. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Yes, sir. We'll try the link maybe again, but sometime before kickoff, maybe we could break some of the games down before we get the season started or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But regardless, we appreciate you. And we'll be looking forward to watching you on the ACC network this fall.
That's right. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy.